I'm going to show you pieces from a show that I've just put up, which has a lot of my most recent work, and what you'll be able to see and about what I do is that most of the time I'm painting women. I try to paint it from a very organic place in that the emotional state is coming from me, incorporated in the figure. I work with a lot of color. I work with very intense environments. I don't want to have the figure isolated from the environment. I want the environment to have the same kind of life as the figure. I think when you're working from a very deep place, a meditative place, that you come up with a figure that is personal, but yet also archetypal, and that's what I'm aiming for. So that it's not just a story about me and the painting that I did, but that it's a personage that other people can relate to. I think if you're working from the correct place, that painting then becomes an open door and people can respond to it with their own story, so it's not necessarily the story that I used to create the painting. This painting is called The Tempest, and I originally took a figure that was from a primitive etching of what Europeans thought Native Americans looked like, and obviously it changed from that. Once I have a figure and start working on a figure, then a kind of metamorphosis takes place, so I'm no longer bound by the initial figure that I started with, but hope that the painting will take on a life of its own, which will change the gesture, change the color. Obviously the etching had no color in it. I had just come back from the East, so maybe the blue color came from that. What I wanted to show was strength. Here the figure is holding the Nautilus, which was one of the symbols of power, that a chief would hold the Nautilus, but also show some distress in that she's holding her hair out. So it's the balance between this turbulent place that she's in, and the turbulence then came into the water, and then it became the tempest. So all of the patterns that exist, so that there are no quiet spaces in her universe. There are elements below that are, some of them can be slightly threatening, but she is above in her power. The last thing I put in were the tattoos, which I think gave her body strength and presence in the painting. And of course, agreed, halo. I'm a firm believer in halos. All right, that is the aura of the person. And yeah, we're all saints. That's basically my belief. So this painting is called I Am Not Afraid, although I think she might be afraid a little bit. I took it from my own environment in that, although once upon a time I was an urban person, now I live out in the woods where lots of surprising things happen. She's in a gesture of movement. Just as I was coming out of my studio, which was a barn in the woods, a deer leapt across the lawn. So I put him in. I incorporate a lot of elements that just happen in the course of my painting. Some of them don't stay, but this seemed a good one because he is responding also to that state of possible fear. There's a little melancholy in her face. The water, I have water in a lot of my paintings. I believe water is kind of the lifeblood of the earth, very important. It speaks to me. So water winding, and yet there's a little bit of, I'm not sure what in the water. It could be a fish, a snake, there are some scales. So it's not just water, it is an environment that's turbulent. Again, that seems to be the theme right now. There's these beautiful, solid trees, this kind of heavenly sky, but yet even in the world that is in nature, there's a tremendous amount of turbulence. I think she's going to be all right, though. She's got a good heart. This painting is called Becoming St. Joan. She's one of my favorite icons. Very often in a painting, I don't know what the painting's about until I'm halfway, 3/4 of the way through. Things change and change and change. Figures come and go. Coloration changes. Setting changes. I had this really nice gesture that I wanted to keep. The color of her garment changed and changed and changed. Originally the painting was longer. I cropped off about 2-3 feet from that, made it a more compressed story. And then in the gesture there's a kind of bolt of lightning coming down, reaching her, and she's changing from a peasant to a saint at this point. So the last thing I did was give her this aura of orange, and then also enhance all of the objects around her again, making the environment as alive as she is. It's charged, the air is charged, the plants are growing. Hopefully everything feels alive in it, including this figure. She's extremely serene when receiving this kind of call to become the saint. I gave her a little fleur-de-lis because she is St. Joan. So these two paintings that were done at different times have to me a very strong bond. This one is called Under One Sky, which I believe is from a Native American expression that we're all the same under the one sky. And this one is called Nature. This one, I was referencing the place where I live again, which has a lot of water. A fox had just come up on my porch while I was painting it, and so it went into the painting. I put this bird in. Tremendous amount of changes occurred, things coming and going. There are some foxes running here. The ground is kind of decorated. Her gesture, she has one hand white and one hand black. I'm not totally sure why I did that, but it seemed right. This gesture towards the fox is very important. Her dress is patterned, like the air around her is patterned. And I wanted to maintain this sweetness, gave her the bow in her hair, but her expression is so gentle and sweet, and again, that's why I called it Nature. But when I look at this face and look at this face, they're the same face. And this one expresses ferocity, strength, determination, and this one expresses gentleness. But to me, when I look at them, they are almost the same face. Again, with the changes that occurred, she's standing in water, the water is turbulent, there's fish. These were initially fish and then became feathers, peacock feathers, or then changed back to fish, I'm not sure. The rays of the sun are churning, and Under One Sky is written again and again and again as a mantra, as a chant, and again expressing the two different sides of nature. One, all this serenity and beauty and gentleness, and here just turbulence and ferocity. So this painting is called Be Fruitful, and it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek because we have this woman here carrying fruit, which is the apple, and there's the serpent. So in one sense it had to do late in the painting with Adam and Eve, but it also has this woman here who's pregnant, and she happens to be pregnant with turtles. And I did this painting after I came back from Tibet, Nepal, and Bhutan, and was responding to the culture. This has the Potala Palace. This was from a lecture looking at the woman's body, where first she's pregnant with a fish, then a turtle, which is amphibian, and then with a little pig, which is human. So here she's in the middle stage, so she has a bunch of turtles there. So she's about to be fruitful as well. I wanted, again, to charge the air. I started to put these scales in. Instead of putting them on the snake, I put them in the air. and there are reptiles climbing through the air, again referring to the most ancient part of our brain, the reptilian part of our brain. I have fish in the water and also salamanders in the water here. The grasses are moving and charged. I think that was the last thing I did in the painting, to just, again, bring everything up to that super present level. In the faces, recently I've done more rendered faces than I have previously. The determination, the intense look in her face is kind of moderated by the gentle look in this face. So again, trying to show both sides of a person, and what it means to be fruitful, what it means to be a woman in the world. So one can be a woman gathering fruit, and one can be a woman reproducing. One can be a woman fiercely and powerfully, one can be gentle, or anything in between. You know, it's like however the story takes shape, I try to follow it rather than impose a story on it. There was never any intention that I would do 2 figures like this, one sliding off the canvas. Initially it was 3 figures, and the central figure didn't work. It didn't open a doorway to the painting, which is what I'm looking for when I work. I put random things down and wait for something to click, wait for a story to start telling itself. When I do workshops in painting, I always say you change the painting changes you. You change the painting changes you. So this is a process that goes back and forth, and this is how the work in the paintings that I've shown you have developed, all right? By allowing them to just constantly metamorphosize until a story takes shape that feels set, that feels like a story that I want to tell, and a story that somebody can respond to even in their own way. It doesn't have to be the story that I intended as I created the painting, but that there's enough here that somebody feels that they can relate to.